Mortimer doesn't just control Maxton Hall anymore, he controls the future of Jaime and Ruby, and Episode 4 proves that Episode 5 is about to hurt in ways no one is ready for. What looks like love, peace, and progress is actually the calm before everything falls apart, because every soft moment in Episode 4 is quietly setting up a brutal emotional collapse. Episode 4 opens exactly where danger always lives in this story. Inside the Beaufort house, where silence is heavier than shouting, Jaime is trying to enjoy a normal breakfast, something simple and human, but normal life is never allowed to last when Mortimer is involved. He storms in with a rage that feels old and familiar, slamming the newspaper on the table like a verdict. Jaime's gala speech, the most honest thing he has ever said out loud about his mental health and his feelings for Ruby, is now public, twisted and exposed for the world to judge. Mortimer doesn't yell for long because he doesn't need to. His words are sharp, precise, and cruel. Stay away from Ruby or suffer the consequences. When he leaves, Jaime doesn't argue or fight back. He just sits there empty, defeated, and that silence tells us everything about how deep Mortimer's control still goes. The contrast hits immediately when we move to Ruby's home, which feels warm, loud, and alive. Her family talks openly, laughs easily, and treats the gala like something exciting rather than shameful. It's a familiar cliché, yes, but it works because it highlights the emotional prison Jaime lives in compared to the freedom Ruby takes for granted. When Jaime messages Ruby asking to talk, what follows is one of the gentlest moments the show has given us. He comes to her room carrying guilt, fear, and sincerity all at once. He apologizes without excuses. He admits he doesn't want to lose her. Their kiss feels earned, soft, and real, but Jaime stops himself, not because he doesn't want her, but because he's afraid of what loving her openly might cost her. Ruby understands this instantly, and that's what makes their connection so painful. She suggests keeping things private, not out of shame but protection. Jaime agrees, and for the first time he looks relieved. They share lunch with her family, smiling quietly, holding on to a secret happiness that feels precious because it's temporary, even if they don't say it out loud yet. Back at the Beaufort house, Lydia's attempt to repair things with Mortimer fails miserably, showing us that the family's perfect image is cracking from the inside. At school, Elaine spirals as she replays Jaime's speech again and again, refusing to accept that Ruby might have won something she believes belongs to her. Her picnic isn't about friendship, it's about control. Her desperation turns ugly when she tries to hurt Ruby by spiking her drink, only for it to backfire immediately when Cyril drinks it instead. From that moment on, Elaine unravels completely. Frederick's arrival makes everything worse with his elitist cruelty toward Ruby, and when Jaime finally snaps and publicly takes Ruby's hand, it should feel like victory. Instead, chaos erupts. Vomiting, panic, humiliation, and the picnic ends in disaster. Ruby's later meeting with Alice Campbell and the Oxford scholarship offer should be pure joy, and for a brief moment it is. Jaime waits for her, hopeful, proud, glowing alongside her. Their date afterward feels peaceful, almost dreamlike, like a version of life that could exist if Mortimer didn't. But the episode ends exactly how it was always going to end, with Mortimer's return, unplanned, unwanted, and devastating. The door opening isn't just a cliffhanger, it's a warning. Episode 4 wasn't about happiness. It was about showing us everything Jaime and Ruby are about to lose. Episode 5 doesn't begin with confusion or misunderstanding. It begins with exposure. Mortimer walking back into that house isn't just an interruption, it's a collision between control and truth. Jaime and Ruby aren't doing anything wrong, but in Mortimer's world, love without permission is betrayal. If the show follows the books even loosely, Mortimer won't hesitate. He will confront Jaime in front of Ruby. Not privately, not carefully, but publicly and brutally. His weapon has always been humiliation, and this moment gives him the perfect stage. He will accuse Jaime of lying, of embarrassing the family, of choosing weakness over legacy. But the cruelty won't stop there. Ruby will become a target, reduced to her background, her family, and her social status. Mortimer doesn't need to insult her intelligence or ambition, because that's not where it hurts. He will attack where he knows Jaime is most vulnerable, the fear that loving Ruby means destroying everything he was raised to protect. And the most painful part of this confrontation won't be Mortimer's words, it will be Jaime's silence. In that moment, he won't defend Ruby the way she deserves. Not because he doesn't love her, but because years of control, fear, and emotional conditioning will freeze him in place. Ruby will feel that silence like abandonment. She will walk out not because Mortimer insulted her, but because Jaime didn't stop him. The damage done in that room won't heal quickly, because it strikes at the core of trust. The next day at school, Jaime won't blame Mortimer, he will blame himself. Shame will wrap around him tightly, and instead of fighting back, he will retreat. When he tells Ruby that this can't work, it won't sound cruel or angry, it will sound defeated. He will frame their relationship as too difficult, too heavy, too impossible to protect. And that's what will devastate Ruby the most. Not the breakup itself, but the realization that Jaime doesn't believe he's strong enough to choose her. This is where episode 5 truly hurts, because it transforms love into something painful and self-doubting. At the same time, Ruby's Oxford scholarship, which should represent freedom and success, will quietly become another weapon. Mortimer will use it to feed Jaime's insecurity, planting the idea that Ruby is already moving beyond his world, that she will eventually outgrow him, leave him behind, and confirm every fear Mortimer has ever drilled into him. And the tragedy is that it will work. Episode 5 isn't about one argument or one breakup, it's about how power, fear, and silence can dismantle something beautiful without ever raising a voice. What makes episode 5 especially painful is that no one stops loving each other. The love doesn't disappear, it becomes heavy. Jaime's fear doesn't come from Ruby changing or doing something wrong. It comes from the belief that loving her means failing everyone else. Mortimer has spent years teaching Jaime that affection is conditional and that worth is measured by obedience. So when Mortimer frames Ruby as a threat rather than a person, Jaime internalizes it instantly. He starts to see himself as the problem. He convinces himself that Ruby deserves someone stronger, someone who doesn't flinch when power enters the room. That mindset poisons every interaction that follows. Ruby, on the other hand, doesn't understand why love suddenly feels like a crime. From her perspective, she offered patience, privacy, and trust. She stood beside Jaime when he spoke about his mental health. She believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. So when he pulls away, it feels personal, even if it isn't meant to be. Her Oxford opportunity only deepens the emotional divide. What should be a symbol of growth becomes a source of guilt. Ruby begins to wonder if her success is hurting him, if choosing her future means choosing distance. Jaime starts to associate her ambition with loss, as if her moving forward means he's being left behind. Mortimer doesn't need to actively interfere anymore because the damage is already done. Jaime begins policing himself. He avoids Ruby's eyes. He hesitates before speaking. He chooses silence because it feels safer than confrontation. And Ruby feels that withdrawal immediately. The space between them grows not from anger, but from fear. Episode 5 uses this emotional distance to show how control doesn't always look violent or loud. Sometimes it looks like a boy convincing himself he isn't worthy of happiness. Sometimes it looks like a girl questioning whether love should hurt this much. This is the episode where romance stops feeling hopeful and starts feeling fragile. And that fragility is what makes everything that comes next even more devastating. Mortimer doesn't just control Maxton Hall anymore. He controls the future of Jaime and Ruby, and episode 4 proves that episode 5 is about to hurt in ways no one is ready for. What looks like love, peace, and progress is actually the calm before everything falls apart, because every soft moment in episode 4 is quietly setting up a brutal emotional collapse. Episode 4 opens exactly where danger always lives in this story. Inside the Beaufort house, where silence is heavier than shouting, Jaime is trying to enjoy a normal breakfast, something simple and human, but normal life is never allowed to last when Mortimer is involved. He storms in with a rage that feels old and familiar, slamming the newspaper on the table like a verdict. Jaime's gala speech, the most honest thing he has ever said out loud about his mental health and his feelings for Ruby, is now public, twisted and exposed for the world to judge. Mortimer doesn't yell for long because he doesn't need to. His words are sharp, precise, and cruel. Stay away from Ruby or suffer the consequences. When he leaves, Jaime doesn't argue or fight back. He just sits there empty, defeated, and that silence tells us everything about how deep Mortimer's control still goes. The contrast hits immediately when we move to Ruby's home, which feels warm, loud, and alive.